Oh, sure.
Why you subtract it from 100 versus just
Yep.
0.03.
So if you have a 3% discount, why do you subtract it from 100? Well, remember you have the full price minus the discount to get the amount that you pay. And if you're looking at the percents, of course, full price is 100%. If you have a 3% discount, what you're paying is 97%. So let's just say, for example, that the full price is $2,000. To find the amount that you have to pay, rather than finding 3% and having to subtract it, it's easier just to go right at the 97%. Because that's what would be left after you subtract the 3%. So that's going to be, what, $1,940? You'd get the same answer, yeah. If we found 3%, it would be 2,000 times 0.03. That's going to be $60. Then you'd take 2,000 minus 60. It's still going to give you 1940. But here's the catch. That's only if you know the amount that you want credited and you're trying to figure out how much you have to pay. In this last example that we did in the beginning here, we had the amount that we were going to pay and we needed to know how much to be credited. So this is the credit, or the balance, times that 0.97 gave us the amount that we paid. So we had the 2,000, which is what we needed to wipe off the account. We figured out that we had to pay $1,940. But if we're told how much we're paying and we want to figure out what is going to be credited to the account, we're working backwards. So let's say that we knew that we were going to pay the $1,940. We didn't know how much that was going to credit the account. You'd have to work backwards and take, and that's why we were dividing by that. 1940 divided by 0.97 is going to give us 2,000. So that's telling us that if we have a payment of $1,940 and a 3% discount, which the 3% gives us the 0.97, the account's going to be credited for $2,000. In that case, going in that direction, we cannot use the 3%. You have to find that 97%. So it's easiest just to always get in the habit of doing the 97. Any other questions? Okay. So as we said last week, there's two steps in the chain from supplier to customer to consumer. And what we were looking at last week was the supplier to the retailer or distributor, or however you want to look at it. The invoicing, the trade discounts, and all that. This week, what we're going to look at is from that retailer to the consumer. So we're assuming they have been purchased from the supplier, and the amount that is charged from the supplier to the retailer is what we're going to call the cost. The amount that then the retailer is going to charge the customer is going to be the selling price. Of course, the retailer has to make some sort of profit off of this, has to cover some internal costs, some overhead and stuff like that, plus some profit, so they are going to have a markup. So the cost plus the markup is going to equal the selling price. And that is a pretty standard equation that's going to cover everything we do. And I'm glad we actually discussed this question up here, because that's something we went over in Unit 1 when we were doing our percents. Let's say we had a sales tax or a price increase or something like that. We used a little table. Let's say that we had 6% sales tax on a $900 purchase. And we wanted to find the total price, the total cost. Well, we set up a table where we had the original price, and to that we would add the tax, and that would give us the total. And in that table, remember, each item was described by a percent and, in most cases, a dollar amount. The 6% was the tax. Remember, in this table, in this case, the original amount, or the beginning value, is always 100%. So that would be the original price here. On the other side, we had $900 was the price before tax. And we wanted to know what the total cost was. We want to know this number right here. There was one thing we could find rather quickly here, which was, of course, 100% plus 6% means the total amount is 106%. Next, there's always two rows of this table that we want to use. There's one row where we know both numbers, both the percent and the dollar amount. In this case, that's the price. And there's the second row, which has the value that we're looking for. In this case, that's the total. Now, here's the value we're looking for. We do have to make sure we have the other amount, which we do. What that's telling us is we don't need this row here. So I'm just going to kind of cross that off for now. And we could do our cross multiplication and division right within the table if we wanted to. We could do 106 times 900, which is going to be, what, 954, I believe, divided by 100. Oops. 95,400, I believe. Divided by the 100 is 954. So the total cost after that 6% sales tax is $954. Well, there's a similar thing that's going to happen with our markup. Our formula for markup is always going to be, I'm going to have to slide down. Did everybody get this down? For markup is always going to be cost plus the markup equals the selling price. You'll see me abbreviating these most likely from now on. The cost I'll write out, but markup will just be MU, selling price will just be SP. And it'll be percents on one side and dollars on the other. The difference is the 100% is not necessarily always going to go here. We have to define, when we're talking about markup, especially retail markup, we have to define what the markup is based on. So there are two types of markup we are going to deal with. Markup based on cost. What that means is the percent is figured as a percent of cost. The markup is a percent of the cost. And what that means is, in that case, the 100% is going to go with the cost. Now I'm color coding this on purpose. There's markup based on the selling price. Now in that case, the markup is a percent of the selling price. So then the 100%, since it's based off the selling price, the 100% is going to go with the selling price. Let me show what I mean by that. So let's say an item costs $40 and the markup is 30% on the cost. Quite often we just say 30% on cost or 30% of cost. Basically what we're saying is 30% based on the cost. Find the dollar markup and the selling price, the dollar selling price. So let's make our chart. Cost plus markup equals the selling price. Percents are going to go on the left side, dollars on the right. First thing I'm going to do in any of these markup problems is I'm going to find and locate the 100%. This is based on cost, which means 100% has to go with the cost. So 100% goes there. That frames how the whole rest of the problem works. The markup is 30%. And now cost plus markup is selling price, so 100 plus 30 is 130% is the selling price. The cost is $40, so $40 goes over here in the cost. We're asked to find both the dollar markup and the selling price. So I'm asked to find both of these. Obviously, I can't do them both at once. So the first thing I'm going to find is the dollar markup right here. So I'm going to ignore this down here for a second. I'm going to do 30 times 40 is 1,200. And divided by 100 is 12. So I'm going to pause there. Does everybody see how I did the cross multiplication and division? These two numbers were diagonal from each other, so I multiplied them to get 1,200. This is the number on the other diagonal, so I divide by it. This is just like if I had this written out as 100 over 30 equals 40 over blank. Cross multiply and divide. So we get the $12 there. Now there are two different ways I could go about finding this selling price. I could go back now and ignore this row, and I could cross multiply and divide. 100 times 40 is 5,200, divided by 100 is 52. So I could cross multiply and divide. Again, that's the same as having 100 over 130 equals 40 over blank. Cross multiply and divide. Or I could have just done 40 plus 12 is 52. I like to cross multiply and divide again, and then I can double check adding up the 40 plus 12 to make sure I get the right total. Either way, what we have found here is the dollar markup is $12 and the selling price is $52. Any questions? So that is markup based on cost. If I'm given the cost, the markup is a percentage of that cost. The other option is markup based on selling price. An item that sells for $80 is marked up 20% on the selling price. So again, this is telling us that the percentages are all based off of the selling price instead of on the cost. So in this case, we're asked to find the dollar markup and the dollar cost. Now for dollar cost and dollar selling price, generally we are looking for dollars there. So from now on, I'll probably just say find the cost and or the selling price. Markup, I will always present whether it's the dollar markup or the percent markup, because we'll see in a little bit that there is a difference, and it's pretty common to ask for one or the other. So at the beginning, our table looks exactly the same. Cost plus markup equals selling price. And our percents in dollars. The difference here, remember I always start out by locating where the 100% goes. Since this is based on selling price, The 100% goes with the selling price. And now we have to work backwards from there. The percent markup is 20%. That'll go here. That means the cost has to be what percent? 80%. Cost plus markup always has to equal selling price. 80 plus 20 equals 100. So the cost is 80% of the selling price. So now to the dollars, we have $80, which is that's what it sells for. That is the selling price, is $80. Now I can pick whether I want to find the cost first or the markup first. Really doesn't matter. I'm going to find the cost first. So I'm going to ignore this row. Now remember, I'm going to erase that and I'm going to use it again in just a second. And I'm going to do, I'm going to cross multiply 80 times 80, 6,400. I'm going to divide by the 100. Gives me that the cost is $64. Now to find the markup, I'll cross multiply here. 20 times 80 is 1,600. Divided by 100 is $16. And again, I can double check. 64 plus 16 is 80. So on that item that would sell for $80 with a markup of 20% based on the selling price, the dollar markup is $16. That is just 20% of the 80. And the cost would be $64. That's just the 80 minus the $16 markup. So let's say that we have an item that costs $60 and sells for $96. Not as much as you would think. Depending on what it is, food actually has a pretty low markup. A lot of your food is around 8 to 12% markup on cost, but you get into clothing, you're looking 30, 40, sometimes 50% markup on cost.
So the rest of the costs are like normally 50 to go for 100.
Yeah, that's not uncommon. So find the percent markup on cost. So our table again is cost plus markup equals selling price. Cents and dollars. First step, as always, locate the 100%. Where is it going to go here? Cost or selling price? Markup on cost. 100% goes with the cost. That's the only percent I have. I'm not given any other percents or any percents in the problem, really. So I'm going to look at the dollars now. Cost is $60. Sells for $96. That means the selling price is $96. What that means is I can find the dollar markup here rather quickly. What's it going to be? How am I going to find it? Well, selling price minus cost, 96 minus 60, which will be 36. Again, 60 plus 36 is 96. Okay. Now again, we have to use the rows that we have both numbers for. That's the cost here. And the row that has the item we're looking for. We are looking for the percent markup. That's this one right here. So that means we don't need the bottom row for now, the selling price row. So we will cross multiply. What do we cross multiply? What two numbers get multiplied? Perfect. 100 times 36 is 3,600. And then divided by 60, which will give us 60. So that is a 60% markup on cost. Not as bad as you'd think. Let's say that we have an item that costs $24 and sells for $40. Find the percent markup on selling price. So again, our table starts out the same. Cost plus markup equals selling price. Percents and dollars. Where does our 100 go here? Percent on selling price. So 100 goes down here. Again, we're not given any other percents, so we're over to the dollars. Cost of $24. Selling price is 40. So the markup is how much? 40 divided by 24 is $16. There we go. Let's subtract. 24 plus 16 is 40. That has to add up. Now we are looking for the percent markup, which is this one right here. So the selling price, we have both numbers, and the markup is the one we're looking for. This time I don't need the cost. So we'll cross multiply and divide. What are we going to multiply? Perfect. 100 times 16 is 1,600. And then divided by 40 is 40. So that is a 40% markup on selling price. Any questions? Okay, it's time for our break. So let's go ahead and take our break, and then we'll come back and start lecturing at about 6:29.